Thanks very much. Good evening and welcome to today's meeting of the Governance Committee. I'm Councillor Eric Pattenden and I'm chairing the meeting. Today's meeting is being held over both Zoom and with councillors present in the meeting room. In addition to myself, the other members of the committee in attendance are Dominic Bowick, Jeremy Cottam, Laura Coyle, Billy Drummond, Owen Jeffrey, David Marsh, Stephanie Stevenson and Howard Wollaston. We also have parish council representation on the committee with Councillor David Southgate. Welcome, David. And Simon Carey, independent member for audit, is also in attendance. Hello, Simon. Parish councillors, independent members and members on Zoom are permitted to speak at the meeting, but they are not permitted to propose, second or vote on the items. We also have John Brown from KPMG in attendance. Welcome, John. Shannon Coleman Slaughter, Section 151 Officer, and Sarah Clark, Monitoring Officer and Interim Executive Director Resources, will be advising the meeting. Darius Zarazel is in attendance as the clerk, and Sam Chiverton is the Zoom host. If we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency exit route, which will be shown to us by the trained officers present. Please follow any of their instructions. The assembly point is the car park of the Dolphin Pub. So we move to item 1 and apologies. Have we received any apologies for absence, clerk?
We received none, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2 is the minutes. I propose that the minutes of the meetings held on the 19th November 2024 can be signed as a correct record. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Drummond, thank you. Any amendments from the floor? No, thank you. Members, please can you indicate by raising your hand if you agree that the minutes can be signed? Thank you very much. We move to item 3, declarations of interest. Have we received any declarations of interest?
We received none, Chair.
Thank you. Any from the floor? No, thank you. So item 4 is the forward plan. Would officers and members like to propose any amendments to the forward plan as published on the agenda? No? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, it may be worth noting that on there was a constitution update due at this committee. The Constitution Review Task Group are meeting now on a fairly regular basis, and they will be bringing through a sort of phase of related updates, and that will come, it is anticipated in due course. So I think that is heading on its way here. I think Councillor Bowick.
Thanks very much. Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Chairman. Does that mean, Mrs. Clark, that the forward plan is going to be amended to show that?
Yes, that would be the intention. And I think depending on the views of the Constitution Review Task Group, we may ask the Chairman to consider an extraordinary meeting if necessary to get updates to the March Council meeting, because obviously any updates to the Constitution will have to go through Council, but that will be a conversation from the Task Group to the Chairman in due course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So if members...
John Brown.
John, please go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry, just a quick one. The very final line in there relates to November 25, look forward. And I think it says 23-24 accounts, and it should be 24-25 accounts. Just a minor point, but I thought I would raise for completeness.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that on board and make the correction. Thank you. Okay, so if the committee are happy to note the forward plan, we can move to the next item, which is item 5. And this is audit findings for West Berkshire Council financial year ended 31st of March 2024. And Chris Dagnall, would you like to introduce the report? Chris, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yeah.
Would you like to introduce the audit findings report?
Absolutely. So members are asked to delegate authority to sign the 23-24 accounts to the Section 151 officer Shannon and the governance committee chair. 2 reports have been tabled by KPMG, which we can come to, and our own paper, council's own paper, has been produced, confirming that the deadline for finishing the accounts, for completing the accounts, is the end of next month. And I don't know if John, are you able to talk through do you want to talk through the report, or do you want me to kick off? Not sure.
Happy to talk you through them, if that makes sense, and then we can circle back.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 reports here tonight. One is the annual auditor's report, which I think is first in the pack, and that's meant to be the outward facing, put on the website report of an overview of our findings. The other one is our audit findings report, also called ISA 260 report. ISA, International Standards of Auditing 260, the one about what you have to talk to a governance or audit committee about. And that's really the detailed findings as reporting to you as the governance committee. So I'll take them in order, but if you could just remember the various audiences for those 2 reports. First of all, for those of you new to KPMG, I'm John Brown. I'm the audit partner, so I'll be signing the opinions. Unfortunately, my manager Ed Mills is away from the office at the moment, so I'll give his apologies. I think, taking a step back, we've done a lot of audit work on the 23-24 statements. You'll remember from discussions over a number of months and a number of governance committee meetings that we're in the backstop arrangements, and there will be a disclaimer of opinion for this year. So this report is meant to tell you what we've looked at the 23-24 accounts, what we found, what we couldn't find, etc., and to give you comfort that we are on that future landing strip of going back to unqualified audit opinions. So we're in the finalisation part of the audit, and we've completed a lot of work. We still have a number of items outstanding. I think, as we say in the paper, the audit's been a challenge. It's a challenge because you haven't been audited for the last couple of years. You've had a number of team changes, even bereavements in your team, which is, terrible news. And that has resulted in we've been waiting for a number of items. When I spoke to the audit team today to say what they thought of West Berkshire, they said the core finance team is excellent. Really good people to work with, really nice people to work with. So even though it's been challenging at times and we've been chasing things up, the behaviours that we've felt and the responses have always been nice, which is really good. I think we have really good responses from the core finance team. I think as you move out of finance into other areas, it's more challenging to get those timely responses, I would say. So the 2 areas where we're still waiting for information that are, I suppose, quite chunky, there was the payroll. You remember last time we said that because you changed payroll system, the ability to actually drill down into kind of individual pay slips, which we were hoping to do as a first year audit because we can't rely on previous years. We haven't been able to access that information, and therefore we haven't as yet been able to conclude on payroll. We've done all the other tests you would expect, ticked in all the payrolls, done the reconciliation of the payroll to what's in the accounts, looked at it compared to last year, but those detailed checks are ticking back to pay slips we haven't done as yet. The other area is investment property, where we asked, we drilled down into some of the detail of some of the investment property valuations, and unfortunately, the valuer didn't respond in time. And since then, you've changed the valuer, so it's very unlikely that that valuer will respond to our questions. So those are the two areas where, as we stand today, we haven't been able to conclude, or we're not expecting to be able to conclude by the end of February, and therefore we will flag those in our final reporting. It will still be a disclaimer of opinion, and we will still try and catch that up for future years to get back to clean opinions. But those are the two areas. The other side of our audit is value for money. And you'll remember last time when we discussed our risk assessment, we said there was a risk of significant weakness regarding financial sustainability. You all know the kind of precarious reserves and finance position of the council, and our final reporting highlights that as the case, as has your previous auditors over a number of years. So we've report that in our final audit findings. So I'm conscious I've rambled for a bit, so I'll pause there to see if there's any particular questions, or you would like me to go in through the detail.
Okay, thanks, John. Shannon, would you like to come in on the points that John's mentioned?
Thank you, Chair. I think to sort of come back to what John has been saying, it's been a very positive experience. This particular audit has gone very well with KPMG. We do have some, we have had some delays on some information. This is generally down to external parties that we work with, trying to get some data about their underlying assumptions, and moving between two systems has meant that some of the information has been difficult to extract. However, we have worked with the auditors to resolve these issues, so we don't expect to have any more significant delays coming through, and hopefully KPMG will be able to finalise their findings soon, so that you will be able to sign off the financial statements by the backstop date.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to check about the wording that may well end up on the website for public consumption. And I'm reading from the paragraph that says KPMG's draft audit opinion. Now, we said last time that there was wording in these standard responses and letters that we really did not like. And I just get the same impression again, that we're putting something out that rather disparages West Berkshire Council's reputation unnecessarily by suggesting a lot of this is our fault, that certain opinions cannot be given and sufficient evidence cannot be produced, when I believe that some of that was not our fault at all, and it was in fact our previous auditors. So I just wonder if I'm exaggerating, or if other members agree the same with me as we did last time, that we just had to alter. We asked you, Chairman, to sign a different wording, which you did. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and you're referring, Councillor Stevenson, to the wording in the audit findings report on, well, in the section 4, the executive summary.
Yes.
Shannon, is that something you can comment on?
We work with the external auditors on the wording of these reports. We do go back. This is a draft report. We will still be working with KPMG on the final report before it is publicised. There are standard wordings that external audit teams do use. John may wish to come back on that. I think it is recognised that we do have disclaimed accounts now, and that is not the responsibility of the council. That is because of situations that arose with our external auditors in prior years, and that is documented. But we will continue to work with KPMG on the wording before this report is finalised.
Yes, please, because I'm thinking of a non-specialist reading it and not actually understanding that. Somebody who doesn't know the background or what this actually means might read it with a very negative response. Thank you.
I think perhaps what we could do there is look at the wording that we used last year and, apply similar wording here, because I think the same situation applies this year as did previously. David, you've got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
On page 16 of the report, it refers to an increase in revenue of 2.5 to 3 million as a consequence of additional houses being built. Isn't that slightly premature in terms of the new plan isn't yet agreed, and as such your likelihood to see any SIL money or so forth would seem to me to be somewhat more distant than what is actually in this account statement? Maybe I've misunderstood, but that seems to be a windfall that you haven't got yet and is not yet agreed in terms of the council's future local plan. The other element of that is that there's an assumption there that it comes with no increase in infrastructure or investment in the other facilities that that money would, generally speaking, be intended for, I would guess. Sorry, if I misunderstood, then please correct me.
No, you're absolutely correct in that statement is very much forward-looking. So there's two things here. We've got the accounts and the numbers, if you like. We haven't included that in anything to do with the accounts. This on page 16 is the financial sustainability, which is the kind of more forward-looking about how have you got arrangements in place to balance the books in the future, to set adequate budgets, and that comment relates to future plans. So none of that is banked yet.
Could I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that perhaps that is clarified within the document to suggest the likely time frame?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you.
I'm happy with that.
Great, thanks so much. Councillor Berwick.
Just to comment on that, my understanding is that that money is not SIL, it's council tax.
John, do you have a comment on that?
I think that's right. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we could get some clarifications made to this, to just following up on what was said, if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Berwick.
Yeah, a couple of points, Chairman. Thank you. On page 13, we'll flick back to it. It talks about the overspend of 3.1 million due to the fact that 56% of the savings forecast or targeted were not achieved. Then there's so my question is there have KPMG found any learnings? Is that brought out anywhere in this report or in later work which identify any improvement opportunities in achieving those savings? That's one question relating to this page. Second point is I don't understand that little table there. It's not saying anything to me. Perhaps Mr. Brown could clarify for me.
Yeah, sure. So The table there is from the SIP for Resilience Index, and why it might seem odd is the three black lines are where you are on that scale in terms of reserve sustainability, level of reserves, and change in reserves. So for other councils that might be more in the middle or to the right, you are at the far left in all three cases on that SIP for Resilience Index measure. So in terms of the comments around you've got the lowest reserves in the country, the lowest percentage reserves in the country, that is just backing up that statement from the SIP for Resilience Index.
Thank you.
In terms of your comment about cost improvement, it's hard for us as external auditors. We kind of land and look at the cost savings and look at the forward plans without going into huge amounts of details and finding out what's going wrong and effectively what's caused that low level of reserves from obviously from the past. The only recommendation we've made is, historically you haven't put your council tax as much as you could have, and therefore that might have given you a little bit more headroom in reserves and in terms of finances. And others in similar positions we've seen have a more centralized cost-facing team that effectively runs through the organization, whereas when we've looked at yours, it seems a little bit more dispersed and disparate. So those were the two recommendations we made in this report.
Councillor Blarick.
Thanks. If I can make an observation, If I can make an observation on the council tax point, it is true that when we on the Conservative side were in administration, we did have years where we didn't take the full council tax. Indeed, 1 year, I think we had a holiday altogether in terms of increases. That was a very different time. That is many, many years ago. And certainly in more recent times, we have always taken the opportunity to improve the revenue by.
I don't know. I have to defer to Shannon on that. I thought, did you do that last year?
We did take the full allowance last year.
Okay.
Councillor Marsh.
If I can just come in on that, would have been 2 to 3 years ago, but I have a very firm recollection of the then administration not putting in the council tax at was 1% less. It was about 2 years ago, because I know this because I argued for putting it up and was admonished by Councillor McKinnon at the time for being a Green who wanted to charge residents more council tax, and that wasn't that long ago. It wasn't years ago, as Councillor Burke indicates. It was quite recently, but it was just 1% less than the maximum.
Okay, thank you. And we know that there's a knock-on effect. If it's not put up in 1 year, then that means there's a knock-on effect in later years. Councillor Cottam.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer on the asset valuation, because I was concerned about that. So I think that the previous comments have answered that question. When going through the report, I got a general idea that there is a fraud risk about managing the accounts. Am I correct?
Yeah, so in auditing standards, there's a rebuttable presumption there's a fraud risk. Normally around, in a corporate, you might see it around revenue and sales. In public sector accounts, it's more around the expenditure risk and this idea that management are in a unique position where they could manage the numbers if they want to. So very much our audit looks for that as a risk and looks for indicators that has happened or hasn't happened. So we do two main things for that. We look at journals and how things are processed within the council who approved them, when they've approved them, why they've approved them, and kind of the transaction flows. So anything that looks unusual or odd, we'll pick out and drill down into. We'll look for unusual combinations, things that we wouldn't expect to do. We do some data analytics on those. And we didn't find anything. So we didn't find any evidence of management override of control, which I probably should have started with that bit. And then the other bit is estimates. So, for things like valuation, MLP, et cetera, management have got the ability to tweak those year on year to alter the numbers. And again, where we've looked at those key estimates, we haven't found any indications of management override of controls or that fraud risk.
So just to rejoin on that, so you feel our internal audits and are covering all of that? The system is sound?
Yes, the caveat, there's a few outstanding items, and fundamentally we haven't got happy with the opening balances and the brought forward position yet, which we know about, but apart from that, yes.
Thank you.
Members, any other comments on these reports? Councillor Coyle, go ahead. You just need your microphone.
Sorry, there was a section which I now can't find, rather unhelpfully, that was a reference to the pension position, and it just said we'd be updated verbally. Yeah. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, sure. So you'll remember pensions has been one of those historic perennial points where previous auditors have had issues. We've not had those issues. Our approach is slightly different. So fundamentally, we look at the underlying assets, make sure they're there, and then we look at the key assumptions that your actuary has made in terms of those key assumptions in terms of rates of growth, inflation, discount rate, those kind of things. We're happy with all of those. So the key assumptions and the underlying assets, we're happy with those. We've ticked those in, and we haven't found any issues with that. We have a handful of comments about membership data, I think, where the actuary and the council have got slight difference in member numbers. We're not expecting it to lead to a misstatement. We're just being diligent and making sure it's we get to the bottom of it.
Thanks very much. Councillor Cottam.
Yes, thank you. I keep an eye on the Berkshire Pension Fund, and basically last year was good, and as of December they were putting together the last year's draft results, which I would expect to appear in the next month or two. So generally, I can reassure the council that it is in a good position, and maybe it's when we have the final report, I'll forward it to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, so if there's no more questions, could I have a proposer and a seconder to approve the recommendation set out in the report, which is that the delegated authority to sign the 23-24 Statement of Accounts is assigned to the Council's Service Director, Finance, Property and Procurement, a 151 officer, in consultation with the Chair of the Governance Committee. Once the Council's appointed external auditor, KPMG, provides a formal opinion of the 23-24 Statement of Account. This approval is subject to the communication from KPMG that there has been no material changes to the draft audit opinion. Do I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Cottam to propose, thank you. Councillor Wollaston, thank you, to second. All those in favour raise their hand. Thanks very much. And now we move to what?
I was just going to say, Chair, what we will do is obviously these two reports have got some caveats and some yellows in there. We will update these at the time of signing, and we'll circulate them to you, so you'll get, a final view with all those loose ends, etc., tied up before you are in a position to sign.
Great, thanks so much. So we move on to item 6, the internal audit update report, Q2 24-25, and Julie Gillespie to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening. So this report is my standard quarterly update report that comes through committee to give you an overview of audit work completed for the quarter. And the key messages of the report are set out in sections 4.4 and 4.5. So the 4.5 really is the overview message. There's no significant issues of concern identified during the work that we've completed for the period that I need to notify you of. In 4.4, I've mentioned there are 2 corporate reviews that we completed that were given a limited assurance opinion, and also 2 follow-up reviews that were given a unsatisfactory progress rating. So that they're the key outcomes for the report. I would say that the numbers that are less than satisfactory are still low compared with the numbers of audits that we complete. So it's not of concern that we've got 2 in this reporting period, or it isn't of concern to me. The work that we've completed during the period is set out in Appendix A. Appendix B gives work progress to date, and Appendix C gives the update on the specific anti-fraud work plan. Section 5.5 is probably the one to highlight with the details. So that is listing the key issues that we identified for the 2 limited assurance reports. That was Birchwood Care Home and Childcare Lawyers. And I'm giving a summary of the findings there. This is our standard practice. 6 months after we completed these limited assurance reports, we'll go back and follow up to check on progress on the agreed recommendations, and that will come back to committee. The next section then goes into the unsatisfactory follow-ups and the summary of the update progress to support where we're saying that we think it's unsatisfactory progress. Now, both of these were completed in the summer. So that was our view at that point in time. What we normally do for these follow-ups when it comes to committee is ask the relevant service director to come along to see if they can give an update, if things have moved on, or if there's any plans or further action they're going to take, but also if members want to ask them any questions. So we've got the 2 service directors that are here to go through these points. We've got the accounts receivable follow-up and the business continuity. So I was just going to say that, has anybody got any queries on my report generally before we go through those follow-ups?
Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, may I just ask if you feel that your word and your demand for action, if there's an unsatisfactory report, is enough, or do you need the support of this committee behind you? I noticed in your conclusions that you say there are no areas of concern, but when I first started to read, I wondered if you would like the governance committee behind you.
Interesting question. My role is to flag up where, and I'm still considered unsatisfactory progress. These reports and follow-ups have gone to senior managers and also portfolio holders for them to be aware of it. When it comes to committee, you do have the option to request that my team carry out a further follow-up, and or you could ask the service directors, once they've given an update, you could say, well, it's whether you're comfortable that the overview they're giving you is giving you assurance those issues are going to be rectified, and are they going to be rectified promptly. If you're not comfortable with that, as I said, we could do a follow-up, or the other alternative is to ask the service director to put something in writing with an end date of what they're planning on doing. So there's a few options of what you can do, and I could suggest what might be an appropriate action, but I won't know until we've heard if there has been further progress since the update. And both of these are corporate reviews, not just operational. And to progress some of these in both areas, it would have taken some time and effort. Shannon will go through the accounts receivable one, where a lot of that was to do with IT related and trying to get resource together to look at the system. And the business continuity one, again, is a bit different than, it's not just operational, that's a corporate process, a corporate quite complex process, and trying to bring everything together and plans for every service director and coordinate it all is quite a big task. So there's reasons why they haven't made progress, but it's whether the plans that they've got is sufficient that it's not going to drag on. So it's a judgment call, really. But at the point that we came to a conclusion on the progress, it's a case of, have they done enough that if we didn't follow it up again or check on it, we're comfortable with how it is now? And in both cases, we weren't. They still needed to push it a bit further, I think is a summary. So if you've got no other questions for me, it might be worth asking Shannon.
We'll just take a question from David Southgate, please.
Sorry.
Good evening. It's really a connecting the previous report with this one, in that the comments made by KPMG about financial control raised some issues associated with, I guess, adherence to financial processes. And when I look at your audit, you've got a couple of areas here that seem to also relate to adherence to financial processes in terms of your deficiencies you picked up. And it was really just to raise with the committee whether you've got two independent reviews coming out with a similar kind of set of conclusions, we should be concerned based on general levels of adherence to financial processes within the council. Sorry, maybe it's me just reading two things being not related, but they seem to have a general theme.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, David. I was going to ask Sharon, but okay, well, Julie, go ahead.
I think if I'm understanding correctly, what the external auditor was saying is they were happy that the financial controls and processes had been followed and there's no management override. They didn't have any major concerns that I picked up on the financial processes. What I'm picking up here is one audit, accounts receivable is one area of income collection. And if anything, the external auditor is talking more about expenditure, I think, and controls and journals. So I think they are different things. And I'm not saying overall across the board, I'm concerned because there's only one financial audit here. Business continuity is not financial. So there's only one area. So I don't see the connection. I don't know what Shannon wants to say.
Yes, I think the external auditor has sort of stated they did not find any management override of financial controls. They've already responded to that on the audit report. In respect of the accounts receivable follow-up, as the 2 points state, one is to do with debt recovery being slower after the pandemic than ideal. That was due to staffing turnover. The team is now stabilised. It is not about a control framework failure. In regard to the automation of the process, that's to do with our system and actual improvements in the system. It does not mean the system is unsafe or weak. It means that it isn't as modern as it could be and that we could automate the system more. And it's around the capacity across various partners in the organisation to modernise that system. So it's what KPMG were looking at with more sort of, as they said, the management framework, journals, etc. And there were no control issues in that respect. And Julie has picked up where we have some process issues that we could be more efficient at and could improve on, which I take on board and is largely to do with resourcing in order to make those improvements.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Members, any other comments? No.
Sorry, Chair, there's the second follow-up on business continuity because the Service Director, April Pebbody, is going to, she's going to zoom in to give you an update on the business continuity. Hopefully, she's there.
It's there. I think she's just trying to rejoin as a panelist at the moment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just a couple of things to follow up on in terms of progress. So first of all, we have a new business continuity champion, Sarah Clark, Executive Director for Resources, who's with us this evening. So that's really a positive news. In terms of my role as Service Director for Community Services, Emergency Planning moved to me in September time. So now I am obviously really keen to progress on the audit recommendations as well. And we have our new interim chief executive. He is also, Joseph Holmes, really keen to work together with emergency planning to progress on some of the recommendations that have been made through the audit report. So every service now does have a business continuity plan. There's been some work done looking at critical functions that we need to get up and running. And I think a kind of new approach to this is that it's been identified that there are some services that we would need to get up and running immediately, whatever the situation. So things like information, communication and technology, customer contact center, and then communications with staff. And then we have a sort of raft of other services that we know are really important, but we would be looking at those services depending on the individual circumstances. So for example, if we needed to get services back up and running and give function to those services, I'll give you an example of payroll. Say everybody was being expected to be paid the next day, we may say that that service is really important to get up and running as a kind of immediate priority. But if everybody had just been paid, then we may not give that so much high priority. So there's been a bit of work done looking at agreeing the response type in relation to the particular situation and the particular situation with the services as well. Also, the emergency planning team are intending to do a bit of work around the business continuity plans to put action cards in place. So looking at what the priorities may be, depending on the different type of situations, whether it might be loss of staff, premises, or IT. And then each business continuity plan will have a set of action cards that will sit with that plan depending on the situation. So to make it easier, I suppose, for those services to be able to pick up the action cards and to quickly be able to look through and react depending on what the actions are. So that's kind of work in progress. The other area is that we are hoping to do another business continuity exercise towards the end of the year. That's still in work in progress and this still needs to be agreed corporately, but hoping to do something later in the year where we look at those priority services that we've identified and then bring in some of the other services as well, thinking maybe around a kind of winter flu scenario to see how we would cope with a loss of staff really. So there's work in progress around all of those areas.
Thanks very much. That's useful. Members, any more comments on that? Councillor Cotton, thank you.
Chair, if you on the appendices, page 99, appendices of A, attached, if this is the right place to raise this, we've got, hold on, where are we? So many pages. Yeah, there it is. Okay, we got under item 2, completed follow-ups. We've got finance, property and procurement with accounts receivable weak or unsatisfactory, and the development and housing business continuity. Is that covered under what we're just discussing now? I'm concerned to see those.
Sorry, can I answer that? Yes, it is. It's the development and housing, the responsibility for that. When the original report was done, it was in development and housing. It has since moved across to April's area and communities. So it's the same, but those are the two areas that they've just gone through, Shannon and April.
And what's happening to improve this, may I ask, well, in these cases?
This is where I was saying that it's up to, in my report, I've mentioned due to, for instance, in the accounts receivable, there's no, well, We could carry out another stage follow-up, but unless Shannon knows when she can get resources or knows at what point that they can start making changes to this ICT system, if we go back now, we're probably going to find the same situation. So it's what plans potentially are in place. So you could ask Shannon for an update on a plan, a forthcoming plan. Or you could agree that we do a follow-up in 6 months, a second stage follow-up. That's an option committee can have. But again, it's my view at the point of time when we did the follow-up was, unless we know when those actions are going to happen, it's going to be the same outcome. The business continuity that what April said is they're definitely moving forward. One of the areas was testing, and they needed to have more structured testing. They needed to have update the priority systems that are going to be implemented if there was an issue. So they are definitely, again, moving in the right direction. So it's whether you're comfortable with that update or you'd like audit to do some further work, or you'd like some sort of maybe written overview from the service directors. There's a few different options.
Thank you, Chair. I would welcome a written overview, please, on these two items, if that's...
on both of them?
Yes, please.
I think that makes sense. I think that'd be useful to know
where we're going. Just
what,
move for a short. I mean, if it's going to take time, it's going to take time. But I'd like to know what time, is it a year? Is it 18 months?
in order to have a view of the timeline for when another audit could take place. I think that would be useful.
Thank you, Chair.
If we coordinate it through me as well, April and Shannon, if you try and put something together for the next committee and coordinate it through me, that's all right.
Yes,
So it's
of course.
just a single recommendation, it's an overview of the key areas that you've just talked through.
Page
So maybe
99.
timelines.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, no decision needed. So if the committee is satisfied to note the report, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 7, risk management strategy. Apologies, Councillor Berwick.
Thank you. Just an observation in terms of the structure of the agenda. In risk management strategy, we have Appendix A, which is essentially the setting out the strategic risk register, which is an agenda item, agenda item 9. Which also appears in item number 8 and again in 9. So we've got the same paper appearing 3 times. And nowhere do I find outside of in part 1 the strategic risk register that item 9 purports to be. So members of the public looking at the papers will not see anything, see a paper on the strategic risk register.
Yes, so if I can just respond. So there are 2 items on the agenda. So there is the risk management strategy at item 7.
Yeah.
And then items 9 and 11 are the Q2 strategic risk register update.
But item 9 isn't.
Yes, no. So sorry, if you permit me, the item 9, the query that you've just raised, I had myself raised with Democratic Services earlier this week because I encountered the same problem, and I was sent a PDF pack version, and the Dem Services, when they looked, could access the correct link, but somebody else has told me today that they had the same issue that you have described and which I experienced. So we are raising another query with ModGov about why that seems to have defaulted. So there should be, you are correct, there should be a part 1 item on the strategic risk register, which is for noting. So we will get that corrected. That the committee have the full part 2. So it's all there.
I know. I know I have.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So we do need to correct
me
it
for a while.
No. Indeed, and I apologise because that is not the experience we want members or indeed members of the public to have.
That's my point.
Yeah.
What do the members, what are members of the public looking at when they view the papers on the website, when they view item 9 on the website?
Yeah, so I think I was looking at a financial report. When I clicked on that, I was taken to a different report that is on this agenda.
Yeah.
So I will ensure that that is updated so that that everyone is seeing the correct part 1 version of that report.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we're on item 7, risk management strategy. And Beatrice Teixeira, would you like to introduce the report?
So, sorry, this one's with me.
Okay.
This report, at item 7, is the updated risk management strategy. So this report was actually, and the updated risk management strategy was actually approved by executive on the 12th of December. So some members may have seen this already in that committee, and apologies that the recommendation wasn't updated to reflect that this is to inform the governance committee of the updated strategy. So the risk management strategy is clearly essential to our risk management framework as it supports the effective identification, assessment and treatment of risks. The risk management strategy will therefore support the council achieving the objectives of its council strategy and service plans by ensuring that we are taking risk-informed and risk-aware decisions. The key changes, so we previously had a risk management strategy. The key changes in this updated strategy are that we are moving to a 5x5 matrix. So this is, I understand, in keeping with industry standard, so that we've got a kind of broader variation by which we measure those risks. And page 122 of the agenda highlights how that will work. There is also an updated risk appetite, which appears at page 120. And that sets out the executive's appetite for risks. And these vary between flexible and open, depending on the type of risk that we are considering. So these are important because they will in fact support kind of the decisions that are taken on projects, in service plans, as I said, and will help officers to inform risks that come to this committee. The updated strategy will be rolled out to teams. There will be a series of training sessions that are going to be delivered, I believe, in February, so that we can support officers in understanding what that risk appetite is. And I think that's really important because I think officers' assessment of our risk appetite is sometimes different from the stated corporate risk appetite. So that training will happen. Members will see this. So the risk sort of register that is on tonight's agenda, members will note that that is still in the 4x4 format because that was assessed against the previous strategy, and we will be using the updated strategy when we do reporting at the end of Q4, so that the kind of March the 31st snapshot will move to this new strategy. So I think that's a kind of key summary of the updated strategy, unless members have any queries.
Councillor Berwick.
Thank you, Chairman. Mrs. Clark, you said that the officers' assessments of risks sometimes don't map with the strategy. What's the consequences of that? Has there been any consequences, or what might there be?
So not identified, but I think what we had a session late last year, or when we were developing the new policy, and I think the assumption is that the authority is very risk averse.
Mm-hmm.
And so if people make that assumption, then you potentially stifle decision making, or you don't take decisions that actually will support your kind of the delivery of your council strategy, delivery plans, etc. So I think it is about being clear about where you're prepared to accept those risks and where you are deviating from those accepted risks and thresholds, that there are appropriate sort of methods by which they can be escalated. So I think the framework is all there. I think I was surprised by people's assessment of what that was. And so I think that was possibly a personal observation, but I think it's certainly informed the need to roll out effective training on this updated strategy to reflect the executive's stated risk appetite, which is that they are open and flexible around risk.
Thank you.
Simon, go ahead with the question. You're muted, I think, Simon.
Sorry about that. Sarah, page 113, the risk management policy statement, second paragraph. It states the council believes that risk can be managed rather than avoided. Now, I presume that there's nothing to suggest otherwise. All risks are being managed rather than candidates for avoidance. And just to a sort of second part of that is, you've obviously considered all of the high, or I'm asking, have you considered that all of the high impact risks and the high probability risks as candidates for avoidance? I don't know if that makes sense, if I can rephrase that, but do you get what I'm saying?
I think so. So I think that the highest risks are obviously reflected in the corporate risk register, and we will review those in terms of, can we avoid them? Can we mitigate them where we can't avoid them? So I think clearly the desirable, if you've got a high impact risk, that the optimal position would be that you would avoid it. And I think if I give the example of kind of the risk of cyber attack or cyber crime, that is something that it appears, or it is something that exists in modern day kind of business, whether that's kind of in kind of the corporate world or in government. And so you have to acknowledge, and you do what you can to mitigate that risk. You implement whatever measures are possible, but if you were to avoid the risk entirely, that would mean not having a kind of digital or kind of imprint and footprint and operating model. So I think it's impossible to avoid that. So what you need to do is then kind of mitigate the impacts and have appropriate safeguards in place. So I think in answer to your question, yes, we do acknowledge that risks exist. We take appropriate measures to treat those risks, whether that be kind of mitigating the impact or not tolerating risk. So clearly one of the options, if there is a very risky decision, maybe that actually we're not going to move forward because actually we're not prepared to tolerate those risks. So I think that the control measures are all there, that are set out here and in our kind of governance processes, whether that be kind of through the assessments and the work of this committee in assessing our risk register. You've got internal audit as well. You've got corporate board. So I think there are appropriate measures to escalate the risks.
So on that basis, I mean, you've probably suggested or intimated that you're continually looking to see if any risk could be avoided. You're looking to challenge the actual risk itself. Is that fair to say?
Yes. So the risk register is a live document. So every quarter we are looking at that, and you will notice that, and certainly on the report that you've got, it will indicate whether risks are going up, whether they're staying flat, or whether they have reduced. Sorry, I'm doing hand signals there. So they are reviewed at least on a quarterly basis. And I think that is kind of considered best practice, and then they're reported into corporate board quarterly and into this committee on a biannual basis.
Yeah, and just finally, just one last thing, is it reads to me like the council believes risk can be managed rather than avoided. And I know there's some sort of follow-on text, but full stop, we won't be looking to avoid, we're going to manage it regardless. And you've answered the question. Yes, it can be avoided. It's the fact that, sorry, you will consider candidates for avoidance. The strategy doesn't say that. The policy statement doesn't say that. That was my only concern, really.
Okay. I think within the report and within the strategy, it does talk about the 5 Ts, and I think within there you've got the sort of the 5 treatment opportunities, and within that you've got kind of the mitigation, which is the treatment, the transfer of risks, tolerating, terminating, or then taking the opportunity. So I think it is clearly set out there, and that will be set out to officers. So if we are reviewing a kind of proposal where we think the risk is too great, it might be that we would recommend that we terminate, or that we kind of mitigate. So I think that the options are there, and I will take that away, because if we need to make it clearer, then thank you for that.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay.
Thanks very much. Members, any other comments on this report? Okay, as no decisions needed, if the committee is satisfied to note the report, then we'll move to the next item. Item 8, financial year 2024 to 25 midterm Treasury report. And I invite Chris Dagnall to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, members. The report has been prepared to summarise Treasury activity at the half year, so to 30th of September 2024. Key sections to draw your attention to, then section 2.2, no recommendations, but members are asked to obviously note the content of the report. Part 4.4, 2 key prudential indicators that the council has complied fully with, and then more detail in 6.1, just around, again, summary of performance, but just reiterating compliance with the prudential indicators. Appendices A to C have been prepared by Link, the council's treasury specialist. Appendix C is the key, building on 4.4 and 6.1, just confirming again full compliance with those indicators up to the half-year point. Lots of detail there, so appreciate, but those are the key sections. If there are questions, happy to take.
Thank you. Members, any questions regarding this report? Councillor Cottam.
Yep. So on conclusion 6.1, on the chart, you've got their actual interest rates.
Yes.
So that would they be would they be the same now, or are they constantly moving up or down?
Constantly moving. I mean, we would be able to summarise at Q3 actually an updated position to that, councillor. So we would have that detail. But this is obviously just summarising to the half year. If you look at the let me just find the page actually. If you look at the second column in that first graphic in 6.1, you can see that the forecast for the full year at 9.3, is consistent. It's almost double what you would see there of the 4714 as at 30th of September. And then we said yes, budgeted interest cost at the 8982. So we are forecasting an overspend there of the 367 that's in the bottom line on that graphic. But yes, we to give you assurance, those costs are monitored on an ongoing basis with the Treasury team.
Okay, well, I think we're looking at a potential half-point reduction, so all is welcome, I think. And the situation, yes. Anyway, thank you for your clarification, Chair.
No problem.
Councillor Berwick.
Thank you, Chairman. In this report, we're told that the council should never borrow more than allowed by the CFR. Not quite sure where it says now, but I read that it says gross external borrowing should not, except in the short term, exceed the total CFR. And then later on, it says that there's a risk that we will be that council will be exceeding the CFR, and attributes that risk to Children and Family Services. When I look at the table in 5.1, there's original estimates and actual spend, capital expenditure, and then revised balance. So, which is, I guess, is where we would expect to see an overage. But children's social care and SEND is, roughly speaking, along with the original estimate. Whereas there's a significant demand coming from environment and strategy, ICT and governance. I'm not quite sure. Could that be explained to me? Because I don't quite understand what's being said here.
Shannon, would you like to respond to that, please?
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a number of different points here. So the table that you've just referred to, that is the status of the delivery of the capital programme as it stands. The risk that this report relates to is in future years is your capital financing requirement, i.e. how much you need to borrow to finance capital in the longer term, should not be outstripped by how much you have to borrow. What this report is saying in the future, driven by there's the high needs block, which is part of the DSG, that is running a significant deficit. That deficit is being carried in our balance sheet, and that effectively is draining all of our working capital from our balance sheet, which means we have to increase our external borrowing to fund the capital programme. And it does mean at some point, if the high needs block deficit is not addressed, our loans requirement would go higher than our capital financing requirement. And that is somewhere in the future.
So that statement is for it refers to future demand.
Yes.
And 5.1 is talking about short term.
Yes. So 5.1 is talking about the current year, essentially delivery of the capital programme. Is talking long term over the next financial years with the high needs deficit and working capital on the balance sheet.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Members, any other comments there? No. Thank you very much, Chris. As no decision needed, if the committee is satisfied to note the report, we can move to the next item, which is item 9, the strategic risk register Q2 2024 to 25. And I invite Beatrice Teixeira, and apologies if I've said that wrongly, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good evening. And you did a very good job on the pronunciation, so thank you for that. Very quickly, the goal of this risk register is just to highlight it, as Sarah mentioned before, it was done in accordance to the risk management strategy and the 4x4 matrix that was in place at that time, and not the new risk management strategy that was just mentioned. So here we highlight the highest rated risks identified by the services. And we have 2 risks that are currently rated at the highest rate of possible in the 4x4 matrix. And both assets related. And we have 1 new risk that is reputational related that was added to the risk matrix. We currently are managing at the corporate risk register level 21 risks, which is the same number that has been in that risk since Q1. And as you might see in the report, there is information on all those 21 risks and what happened, how they moved, if they were escalated or de-escalated, and if there was any change in their rating. I'm happy to answer any questions or go into further details afterwards.
Members, any questions here, or should we save them for part 2?
why is this in part, what are we looking at? Or what will we be looking at in part 2 that is not here? Why is there a part 2 paper?
Well, my understanding is there's more.
Because I've got nothing to compare with, have I? I've got nothing to compare part 1 with part 2.
So the part 2 report contains all of the detail about what the risks are and potentially where those mitigations are. So for example, if it was a cyber crime risk, which I'd mentioned earlier, which is a kind of risk that will impact many, you wouldn't necessarily want to publish what your defences are, because if somebody was so minded, you may be signposting them to your defences. So I think that is why you will have things in a part 2 report. And so, it is the detail that's in the part 2 report about what those strategic kind of high level corporate risks are. So the part 1 report will say, for example, we've got 16 corporate risks that are kind of in the kind of highest level risks. So it will talk about the number and where they sit in that risk matrix. The detail of those risks appears in the part 2 report.
So I'm looking for guidance here. I have a question that relates to ongoing risk number 2 on page 176. And I have a question around a statement in the
I think I think you indicated that you only have the part 2 report. I would suggest that we have the conversation about the part 2 report in part 2. As I say, I apologise that part 1 report wasn't there.
So is the assumption, sorry to be picky here. So are you, Ms. Clark, assuming that the commentary and item number 2 is not in part 1?
So which page, sorry?
176. Because if it's in part 1, then we should discuss it now.
That won't be in part 1.
If I may ask, the comment is on the table next to the variation in the rating.
Yeah.
Those comments are not included in the part 1. They're just in the part 2.
I'll wait then.
Apologies. It is a fairly standard format that we followed for some time. So apologies.
Yeah, but you take my point there.
No, indeed.
I don't know what's
absolutely. No. It is a entirely valid point, and it is not satisfactory that we don't have the 2 reports.
And in the interest of openness, we wanted to put an overview of the position of the risk register in part 1. Unfortunately, we can't see that today, but if you just hang on for 2 minutes, we'll get to the part 2 discussion. And
I confirm the part 1 summary will be published so that people can access that if they are interested, but it will have limited details about the nature of the risks and the mitigating measures.
Thank you.
Okay, so members, no decision needed here, but if we're satisfied to note, given current circumstances, we'll move on to the next item, which is the exclusion of the press and public in order that we can have the discussion in part 2. So as a discussion of that item is likely to disclose exempt information as described in paragraphs 3, 5 and 6 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, I move a motion to exclude the press and public. Is that seconded? Councillor Berwick, thank you. Will all those in favour of the motion please raise their hand? Thank you. That is passed, and therefore I call an end to the public part of the meeting. Thank you for all attendees, and could we now end the broadcast?